Hi, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. Today I am going to give you twice the action as my usual video here at Roy's Book Reviews, in that I will be discussing two titles rather than one, two graphic novels to be specific. The first one is Incognegro by Matt Johnson, and it was the first graphic novel that I've ever read so far as I can recall. It was a great story, although too short for my taste, probably due to the nature of the graphic novel format. Word count of even the densest graphic novel will be considerably less than a text-only book for the most part. Perhaps there are a few exceptions, graphic novels that are 500 pages plus that will take you several days to get through. This is not one of them. I appreciate the existence and increased popularity in recent years of graphic novels, largely because my daughter is a rather reluctant reader, and the best way to get her to read sometimes is to give her a graphic novel. I've read a few Matt Johnson novels in the past. Consider myself to be a fan of his. I've done reviews of one or two of his books here before, so I was curious to give this book of his a shot. It's a story of a black man who can pass for white. He is a reporter from up north who travels down south to report on stories of race-based cruelty, specifically lynchings. Undetected as a black man on account of his light complexion, he is able to get an up-close view and speak with the participants, circumstances that would not be allowed if they realized he was an African-American reporter. Once back home, he writes about these terrible events under a pseudonym, keeping his true identity hidden to his readers, as well as from the awful people he writes about, allows him to repeatedly go undercover. But he's about done with the whole business, eager to write under his true name and identity, rather than going incognegro for every one of his articles, when he is convinced to go on one last journey into enemy territory. He's convinced to do so because the black man who's imprisoned for murder, unless somehow rescued or proven innocent, happens to be his brother. To avoid venturing into spoiler territory, I'm going to end my synopsis of Incognegro here. I enjoyed it very much, the story and the accompanying illustrations. There were enough twists and turns in the plot that it easily could have been written as a thrilling text-only novel, had Matt Johnson chosen to do so, I believe. And if expanded upon, I could see it being adapted into a movie. But I'm here to review what the book is, not what it could have been or could be. And to that end, I'll say I'm glad to have made Incognegro my inaugural graphic novel. The second one that I read was just yesterday, actually. And this one is called Persepolis, The Story of a Childhood. Frankly, I was not ready for it. It was a summer reading school assignment for my daughter. I decided to give it a read after she was done with it. She's not a big reader, as I mentioned, so, she lucked out in getting assigned a graphic novel that she could read pretty quickly. Turns out she lucked out because she was assigned a terrific book. I'm not the target audience for graphic novels, since as much as I love illustrations, I happen to be married to an illustrator. She's done my cover art, and we, of course, are the team behind the absolutely amazing adventures of Ava Applesauce. I am the writer, she's the illustrator. But in general, words are my jam, particularly as a reader. This does not mean I'm a fast reader, for the opposite is true. I usually choose to take my time and savor a narrative. Certain page-turning thrillers that I can't help but race through are the exception rather than the rule. Persepolis is the second graphic novel that I've read, as I mentioned, the first one being Incognegro. I really enjoyed both of them, and they both go into very intense territory. I was flat out blown away by Marjane Satrapi's Persepolis, The Story of a Childhood. The title and its subtitle tell you what the book is about, but that doesn't mean I was prepared for the upbringing detailed in this memoir. As with graphic novels, I don't read a lot of memoirs either. Each of the ones I've read have been excellent and fascinating. But I don't see the point in writing a memoir if you have not led a super interesting life. I've enjoyed my own autobiography to date, but I wouldn't bore readers by putting it down on paper. Instead, I will steer them to books such as Running with Scissors by Augustine Burroughs, and Me Talk Pretty One Day by David Sedaris, Days of Grace by Arthur Ashe was another very good memoir that I read. The Barack Obama memoir, Dreams from My Father, is also excellent. But as for Persepolis, which is now added to my list of wonderful memoirs, its author was born and raised in Iran, which is an exceptionally eventful and combustible place to grow up. And to do so as a girl has its own unique set of complications and barriers. Satrapi writes from first-person perspective as a child, rather than an adult recounting her younger days. That puts the reader in the here and now, which for this story I thought was more effective than if she had written it as her looking back on days gone by. Makes the typical reader older and presumably wiser in ways of the world than the protagonist is. There is a charming naivete to her outlook and interpretation of events because she is only in her early teens. Yet what she goes through and survives in 14 years is far more than someone who finds their way to this gem of a book in a place far less unstable and volatile than Iran. The narrator reveals impactful events to us in matter-of-fact fashion, such as one day being a student in a co-ed, non-religious bilingual school, and the next day a student in an all-girls school with the wearing of veils now obligatory. No need to embellish drama when so much of it is taking place. The contrast between the stylistically simple black and white illustrations and the brutal inhumanity of what is taking place is startling. It's like a preschool children's book and a rated R horror flick merged into one. The amount of devastating events that transpire throughout the course of about 150 pages is staggering. Loved ones are introduced on one page, killed a page or two later. The tragedy just keeps coming. Yet we also can't help smiling in certain places as this stubborn, resilient girl puts together a punk rock look, or goes shopping for music by acts that we old enough readers may remember from the 1980s. Scoring posters of Iron Maiden and Kim Wilde that her parents sneak into the country for her. It's contraband. Or when she takes a forbidden puff of a cigarette in the basement and declares herself to have reached adulthood. Regime changes are detailed at a dizzying pace. No matter who is in charge of things during any given period, repression in one form or another is present, as is danger. Permanence is a foreign concept to this Middle Eastern world. Her immediate family is the only constancy, but how long can it last when the only reliable guarantees are a sudden change and arbitrary violence. Since we are reading her book, we know that Marjane Satrapi made it out alive. Writing this book probably helped her to emerge emotionally intact. I read Persepolis over the course of a day, but suspect that I will be thinking about it for a long time to come. So that's what I have to say about Persepolis and about Incognegro. 2 excellent graphic novels, 2 excellent books, period. I highly recommend both of them to you. Until next time, this is Roy, Roy's Book Reviews, saying happy reading. P.S. I found out after shooting my double graphic novel book review video that there is a follow-up to Matt Johnson's Incognegro that was published, a prequel to it, actually called Incognegro Renaissance. So I'll have to check that out at some point and share my thoughts with you on it at some later point in time.